All units, level 4 mobilization. Location, Fisk Tower.
Fisk. PS4-exclusive Spider-Man, much like its protagonist, wears its heart on its sleeve. There are obvious gameplay influences from other superhero games like the Batman Arkham series, but thanks to a relatable hero, superlative movement, and great combat, it ends up being more than the sum of its parts. Spider-Man is not an origin story. Instead, it has Spider-Man aka Peter Parker managing his day job as a lab assistant and fighting crime, as well as picking up the pieces of his personal life after breaking up with his girlfriend and star reporter Mary Jane. And while Spider-Man dealing with adult life makes for a compelling setup, it also ensures that you're in the role of the web-slinger in his prime. Developer Insomniac drives this point home with the very first mission of the game, having you tasked with apprehending longtime Spider-Man villain and crime lord Kingpin, complete with an entertaining boss fight. Instead of wasting time in low-stakes situations, you're thrust right into the action. Before you know it, the story quickly evolves into a sinister plot that has our hero combating the who's who of Spider-Man villainy, such as Mr. Negative, Rhino, Electro, Vulture, and Scorpion, to name a few. From the outset, you're treated to a slick set of controls that make the combat enjoyable. On the surface, it might seem akin to the Batman Arkham series, having you string together a set of punches and kicks, but it's layered with unlockable skills that add variety to the fisticuffs. These include automatically shooting webs to incapacitate your foe on dodging their attacks at the very last moment, throwing rockets back at their sender with your web shooters, or yanking guns from would-be attackers. Fighting in Spider-Man takes on a life of its own when you're pitted against a wave of enemies, as it has an almost ballet-like elegance to it. Sliding behind a shielded gangster to land a knockout blow doesn't get old, and neither does juggling multiple enemies in the air as you pulverize them to bits. There's a welcome variety of combatants to square off against, and the boss battles are equally challenging. All of this makes donning the role of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man an absolute treat. Outside of combat, you'll find yourself swinging across the many tall buildings of New York City. It builds on Insomniac's Xbox One exclusive Sunset Overdrive that rewarded players for avoiding walking on the ground in favor of dashing across buildings and rails. The sense of momentum you achieve by stringing together leaps between buildings is perhaps the best, most responsive sense of control we've felt in a game this generation. So much so that in our time with Spider-Man, we avoided the option of fast travel because movement feels incredible. And while combat has us intrigued with its depth, Spider-Man's traversal kept us hooked. In fact, the traversal in Spider-Man is good enough for us to bother with its many collectibles. Throughout your journey, you'll notice that New York is peppered with research labs to activate, areas full of enemies to clear, challenges to pursue, and backpacks to collect. Doing these nets you tokens that you can use to get suits such as the Armored Mark III variant that grants you brief periods of invincibility, or the Spider-Man 2099 suit that lets you lower gravity when in the air. Certain suits, such as the Spider-Man Dark suit, are available on completion of side quests, of which the game has plenty. On occasion, you'll be put in the role of Mary Jane. As a journalist, she partners with Spider-Man in his search to unmask the conspiracy that threatens New York. These are in the form of stealth missions in locations such as museums and compounds. You'll hide between cover as you make your way towards a piece of evidence unseen that helps you take the story forward. Some might find these to be an annoyance, as the moment you're seen, it's game over. But there are ample tools at your disposal that make them simple to negotiate, such as being able to distract or incapacitate an enemy. To us, these sections were a welcome change of pace from the breakneck series of events experienced as Spider-Man. Clocking in at around 30 hours to complete Spider-Man's main campaign, and more if you decide to go after everything else the game has to offer, Spider-Man for PS4 isn't just a triumph for video games. It's quite possibly the definitive interpretation of the superhero yet. Thanks for watching this video, and for all things gaming, stay tuned to Gadgets360.com.